Here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Contingent, my fellow co-host and filmmaker, because we're live today, John Woolscroft. John, how you doing?
This film was terrible. I mean, Batman was fat. He fought a shark. All the villains were on a submarine. There was pows and kabooms, and Batman had to throw a bomb away at the end. I didn't care for it whatsoever. I mean, that was the new Batman movie, right?
Yes. That
It
was
looked
the
like
new Batman movie.
It looked like it was shot in the 60s. I'm not going to lie. These cameras, they kind of brag about. I don't know about it.
I don't know. It also looks a little bit like Gotham City kind of exists in this weird area where there is no sunshine at all. And it rains a lot.
Pittsburgh?
So yeah, I was going to say that. I was going to say, is this actually Pittsburgh that they filmed in? Because we know they did that with The Dark Knight, but obviously not with the Batman, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Now, this is a very special episode, mainly because we're doing video for this one. So if you're listening to this one kind of like, after the fact, and you're like, why do they keep asking people for comments and crap and remarking about how, ugly they look? It's mostly because of the fact that we're video today. So we felt that with a movie like this, we had to do something special. Hence the video.
I will happily comment on the fact that I should have ironed this shirt before I wore it, but it's like I just grabbed a Batman t-shirt that is dirty, but I'm like, I got to represent Batman while we're talking about it. So.
No one would know that it was dirty if you didn't just tell the internet that it's dirty. No one would know. No one would know. But you just did that.
Not smelly, just needs a washing. Needs a washing. Put it out the window for an hour, it's fine.
Yeah. So this is a very, very special episode. We felt that it was necessary, mainly because of how we felt watching the movie. I know we didn't really go too much into kind of like, our specifics on it when we talked before about kind of our initial reactions, but I can tell you that we all kind of, hated it.
Oh, yeah. I tell you, bat bombs and yeah. Oh wait, I think I saw the '60s one. I download the wrong movie?
There was a Riddler in it, and he was all green, and he said "joygasm." That's Batman Forever.
You saw the wrong movie too.
I saw the wrong movie.
But yeah, no, I think it's fair to say that we both enjoyed this movie quite a bit, and Brian
enough to make a live stream of it. Yeah. That's the thing.
And Brian, I'm gonna throw you to the wolves. This is usually one of those like end of an episode things, but I like to come out hot. Where does this lie in terms of the Batman movies? And if you want to include like the Dark Knight Returns of Year One or the Long Halloween, because those are Batman, where does this lie in terms of your feelings about the Batman movies?
I think I would say, and I've had this conversation with another person today too, and I think for me, I would say that this is without a doubt the best live action interpretation of the character Batman that we've ever had.
That's an interesting, we need, dear listeners, he said interpretation. So is it your favorite movie, or do you think it's the most honest portrayal of Batman from comic book to movie?
I am a child of the 90s, so like for me, Batman will always be Michael Keaton. So like when the Flash says, "Oh yeah, Michael Keaton's going to show up in the Batman," I'm all for it.
Yeah, I had a joygasm.
yeah. Like I saw that, and then like saw the behind the scenes photos of it, and heard the Danny Elfman music that was in the trailer. Like, yeah, you got me there. But for me, it really was a matter of really trying to trying to think of the word that I want to use, trying to really get an accurate portrayal of this character. Like, I've seen a lot of Batman films that have gotten aspects of the character. For instance, I don't think anyone can doubt that Michael Keaton really got the crazy side of Batman, of a person who decides that with all their money, they're going to dress up like a bat and terrorize. Yeah. Like if you want to get kind of an idea of what does the crazy person do, that is 1989 Batman. Val Kilmer, I thought he did a good job as portraying that playboy Bruce Wayne. While his Batman was kind of lacking. George Clooney, I don't need to go into that.
No, George Clooney never played Batman. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I thought Bale, up until the most recent one, was the best we were going to get. I really thought that was going to be kind of the best interpretation of Batman on film. And I'm talking about specifically live action. Now, I'm not talking animated because, honestly, the animated ones in my mark have always kind of hit the sweet spot of getting everything about the Batman right. But it's never been a matter of getting it all right in live action.
Now, question for you,
sure.
Brian. Are you talking about Christian Bale's representation of Batman or Bruce Wayne or both?
Both. I felt that he was able to get aspects of it. Now, the one thing, and I told my brother about this when we watched it, because him and I went and saw it on Sunday. The one thing that has always been lacking in just about every live action portrayal of Batman has been the absence of his detective skills. Every single interpretation has always relied on his fear and his physicality and, those darker aspects of his personality, but have never really dived into the fact that this person's superpower is not actually just his money. It is his intelligence, his deductive mind.
Well, Batman is a Mary Sue. Can we just say that right now? He's the world's greatest fighter. He's the world's greatest detective. He's the world's greatest scientist. So he has no faults. Also, he's got an 11-inch penis that vibrates. Yeah. Alfred, put the vibrating microchip in my butt. Yes,
Yeah,
So.
I mean, he definitely, he is very much that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, that's fine, whatever. But I just think for me, for a superhero who has zero superpowers, Batman his superpowers always been one, his financial means, but secondly, and this is really the most important thing, his intelligence. That is what it's always separated him from everyone else. There is a fantastic animated Justice League film. I forget the name of it. I think it was War or one of the other ones. But there is a scene where Batman literally has figured out every single way of taking down every member of the Justice League. He knows it all, and he keeps them on his computer. And it was actually used against him in the Justice League by Vandal Savage. So the point is that the man's smart enough to know how to take down someone who is stronger than him. And that's always been what has made Batman special.
But he has to be prepared to do that. Like, Brian, I could cut you off right now because I have a microphone. But if I came on this live stream without a mic, I'm not cutting you off. So he better have some kryptonite ready to go.
But what I'm saying is where that's the thing is, like, Lex Luthor and all the villains against these people have never really just taken a very cold approach to it and just been like, all right, how do I actually take down someone like Superman? Okay. And Batman does it without ego. He doesn't do it with the idea of, I'm taking down this person because I don't like them. It's, no, I'm taking down this person because they become a threat. And coldly, he will stop the threat. So what I'm trying to get across is that intelligence that the character of Batman has never really been portrayed properly in a live action space up until this version. And that's, for me, was a big deal because I'd always wanted to see that. I always seen the animated stuff. I'm just like, why can't they take what they do so well in the animated films and actually just port it over to live action?
Well, and I have to hand it to this movie because there's two things that I think every writer who I've seen interviews from over the years said are the two hardest things to depict in a film. One being Batman's detective skills, because that kind of thing is hard to write anyways. And two, the Riddler. If he is this genius puzzle maker, you got to think about the audience. Like, do you want the audience to be able to crack his riddles, or do you want them to be so complicated that they're not going to be able to, and does that take them out of the film? So the Riddler is a very, very, very hard character to write, but just and this movie does both. But to go back to what you were saying just about Christian Bale, one thing that I didn't like about Christian Bale's performance was him pretending not to be Batman when he was like the playboy out on the town. Like, it made him, in my opinion, seem so obviously Batman. Like, oh, I'm gonna just like crawl into this fountain with a bunch of like, you know, strippers and stuff at this high expensive restaurant. Look how crazy I am. It's like, okay, that guy's Batman.
Well, yeah. I mean, clearly, I like that's the thing is, and I saw some people complain about this film, saying, "Oh, well, Bruce Wayne, he's all brooding and he's angry and he's not a playboy and he's not." Dude, the guy's what, 2 years in on this? He's still dealing with the emotional scars of his parents dying.
Yeah, and first off, do you want the same thing every time?
Yeah,
audience, and B, good. Like, it's good to have that kind of version of Batman because Batman is a crazy person.
He
is.
You
don't just, you know, and I love that Alfred is always on board with this. Like, I just got back from my time in the mountains. Oh, you've been gone for 7 years, Master Wayne. What are you going to do? I'm going to beat up people for selling drugs. Okay.
I'm going to beat up people for selling drugs.
I'm going to dress in a gimp outfit, but with bat ears. And I'm going to find someone who steals a purse and beat them with an inch of their life in the middle of the night.
Okay, Master Wayne. Sounds
okay,
good to
Master
me.
Wayne.
Whatever.
The checks are still going to process, right?
Yeah.
You still have access to the wine cellar.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Wayne. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely. I think for me that portrayal of Batman as a detective, yes, is very difficult, and it's a lot easier on the screenwriter to just say, well, we're just gonna. He's smart. He's just really physical, and that's what sells. It's visual. But what about you, John? What were your kind of initial thoughts from this movie after seeing it?
That's broad. But just talking about Robert Pattinson real quick, and I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I thought he did fantastic, and I did appreciate that there was a different take on this. You know, Batman can be a lot of things. You know, there was the gritty by like the 40s standards Batman, and then they got into the war, and Batman turned into a, you know, kind of a jokey goofball that we then got parodied in the 60s, and then, you know, the 70s was kind of, you know, wherever, and then the 80s brought back gritty Batman, and that's kind of what we got with Michael Keaton, all that. So Batman can be a lot of things. There's a lot of interpretation there, and so for like moody emo Batman, I was there for it, because Batman, the kind of guy that does this, is a crazy person. So, you know, I appreciated that take, and I appreciate it wasn't just like Christian Bale Part 2.
That's what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I really did. I thought that was what we were going to have was Christian Bale Part 2, and we didn't get that. Now, it's actually funny. You pair these two movies side by side with something like Batman Begins, which I think if you tried to find a parallel, that's pretty much the parallel there. And it, you know, Batman Begins looks so bright and colorful compared to the Batman. It's kind of ridiculous, but
and all these movies just try to get more dark and more gritty and more grounded. It's going to get to the point where somebody's going to look at the script and go, what if it just didn't have Batman in it? Because it's going to be so grounded in reality. And like, you know, I mean, look, I love that. I know it's not for everybody. Some people want comic book movies to be comic book movies. But the fact that Batman's a real person, I do think that it lends itself more to being as grounded in reality as possible. Brian, I know you and I talked about this, and I'm a little upset we didn't get more of this. I thought this movie was going to be some kind of combination of Christopher Nolan meets Tim Burton, and it was just more, Christopher Nolan meets David Fincher, because this is just Seven.
Oh, you know what? Literally, I think I said that to someone the other day, that this literally was a Fincher film. Like, it felt 100% like a Fincher film.
Yeah.
And that's a different area that any superhero movie has really gone into. I've never seen a superhero film go that dark, where it feels more like a thriller than it does a box office, superhero film, like a Marvel film. I can't imagine Marvel ever trying to go down this path.
Marvel are pussies. They would never do it.
But you know what I mean, like, right? Like I cannot see them ever doing that.
Oh God, no.
They'll play it off for laughs, like with Deadpool. They'll go R-rated with Deadpool. But the funny thing is, like, this was still PG-13, and it felt very dark and very violent and very terrifying at parts.
I was actually surprised that it was PG-13. I looked that up in like my preparation for tonight. So I was like, that wasn't rated R. I mean, and I guess there was no F-bombs and no boobs and, all the easy go-to R rating. But like, yeah, this movie is dark and honestly, this movie like makes The Dark Knight like seem like not cute. You know what I mean? But like, there's some humor and levity
a little
in
bit
that movie.
like Batman Forever. That's what it felt. Very, 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 light compared to the Batman. By the way, just want to get this out there. We have not gone into spoiler territory yet. We will. We will tell you when we go into spoiler territory. But didn't want to get that one away.
We'll give like the 5-second countdown before we get into the fact that the Penguin's actually a Martian and Batman has 3 dicks. Oh
shit, John! Come on, man. But yeah,
one penis is for justice, the other for sexual justice, and the third one is the world's greatest hog detective.
I didn't know where I was going with that. And people can actually see us live, so they probably could just see my eyes, like not knowing where that was going. But to finish up this whole kind of segment, I would say I'm unable to remove myself properly from Batman 89. I never will be able to talk constructively from. But I will say I think there is a Mount Rushmore now, and if I'm not including the straight adaptation graphic novel films, because like I feel like that's a whole discussion on whether for that in another time, or Long Halloween, Year One, what have you, is that I would say if it's not just a straight adaptation of one of the graphic novels, I would say the Mount Rushmore in no particular order is Batman 89, The Batman, Dark Knight, and Mask of the Phantasm. So that's
Mask of the Phantasm is really good.
That's your Batman Mount Rushmore, in my opinion. So
for me, it's kind of the same thing. I haven't seen Mask of the Phantasm in years, so I actually have to rewatch that one. But I will tell you one thing: if you want to talk about animated films, Long Halloween Part 1 and 2, excellent. Pairing of films. Did you end up seeing it?
Oh yeah, and it was one of those things that I'm like, how because there are so many great Batman graphic novels out there. Like if you just straight adapt those, like, how do I compare that to, like, say, The Dark Knight, which is based on certain comics, sure, but it's an original story for the film. Like, how do you properly contextualize the difference between those two? So that's why I didn't mention like Year One or The Long Halloween, or I didn't mention The Killing Joke because it fucking sucked. But
that one was not good. Yeah, it was disappointing because that was made by Bruce Timm, and Bruce Timm did like the Batman animated series and everything. So. Mm-hmm. The fact that he really fucked that one up real bad, and, really like butchered Barbara Gordon in it, completely tore apart her character. It was really disgusting. But
I want your penis, Batman.
Yeah, that's weird. I'm like that's his best friend's daughter.
Yeah,
it's his best friend's fucking daughter. God damn, what the hell, Bruce Timm?
Gordon, I didn't get it in the butt because we're friends. And she asked for it over and over. And I'm like, no, Jim is my boy. I can't fuck
Why
your
does your
butt."
Batman, when you're doing that, sound a little bit like Trump? It's kind of ridiculous.
Gordon, let me tell you. I'm Big Lee downstairs.
Oh, God. Horrible. Horrible on 11 level. I'll never look at Batman the same way again.
No, ruined it. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you did. You did. So, do we want to go into a little bit of spoilery territory? Do you want to move into that, or do we have a little bit of
not quite
dancing
that?
around?
I do want to ask you. Let's do the bat dance.
No, I'm not doing that.
Stop the press. What does this mean for the DCEU? Like, have they just given up any semblance of continuity? Or is it like these are just parallel universes? Like, it just, like, for something like Marvel that is so streamlined and everything means something to everything else. There's no like rated R Guardians of the Galaxy that's not the real Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, like this DCEU just seems like just this hotbed of confusing sick now, where they don't know what they want.
Well, I mean that's right. That's it right there. Is they don't know. And I mean, I think it's one of those things that the DCEU has kind of tried to do this thing where they throw anything at the wall and see what sticks, you know? So at first they were like, well, let's just copy Marvel, right? Let's just see what they did, you know? They took how many movies to get to be, you know, the Avengers? Well, let's just give them what they want right off the bat. You know, let's give them Batman v Superman. And then let's see how big of a failure that is. And then it's, well, let's just put all of them in there. So we'll just do Justice League, right? And let's see how big of a failure that is. And then, you know, get it back. And now, so it's one of those things that they have tried a million different things and have really not come up with one that's kind of a going plan. The only thing that's gotten close to it has been these solo one-offs. Joker was awesome. Okay? No one can take that away. The Joker, fantastic movie. It's gritty. It's rated R. It's full of blood, and it goes in a lot with what the character the Joker is, and it revitalizes it. Yes, does it dive a little bit into some weird Batman mythos with the fact that they actually show like Thomas and Martha Wayne getting killed at the end of it? Yeah. And you can take it or leave it, but
I actually kind of like that because it was such a different take, you know?
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. I know that some people did. But I personally, I loved it because it was not so much about how big of a giant fucking tentpole movie can we make. Can we just get back to making a very simple movie with really looking at just one character? And that's kind of what this movie felt like. It felt very much like we're again taking a look at this single character. And I'll tell you one thing. The one thing I love about this particular movie, Batman doesn't become a side character to his own fucking film.
I'm glad you brought that up. Because
he doesn't.
I almost felt there was like almost too much Batman in this movie, and I don't mean just Batman / Bruce Wayne. I mean Batman, because this one feels so much like a graphic novel, and I've read countless Batman graphic novels. The point where I'm actually kind of getting sad now because I'm like, oh, are there any more out there to read? Like I'm never satiated when it comes to Batman.
Right.
But in the graphic novels, he's almost always in cape and cowl.
Yeah.
You know, you very rarely get like Bruce Wayne scenes. That's more of a thing for movies. And I felt like it seemed like he never got out of this goddamn outfit in this movie. And there was very little Bruce Wayne. And when he was there, like, there was a scene where he ended up having to put on the Batman clothes almost immediately. Like, so it's like, is there such a thing as just too much Batman?
I don't know. So. I don't think so, because here's my thinking about it. Okay. Every movie that Batman's been in, he's always been a secondary to someone else, be it the Justice League, be it Superman, be it any number of his villains. I mean, even though a lot of people will say, oh, The Dark Knight's the best Batman movie. Yeah, it's the best Batman movie because of Heath Ledger. It's because of him. Batman is a side character to him. That's it. Okay? Every scene that Heath Ledger was in, he stole the show. Okay?
Well, the villains are always more interesting, are they not? I mean,
They are.
The
but-
Riddler purposely was this kind of like Zodiac guy who you really didn't see his face. They went out of their way to make
True.
him not more interesting than Batman.
Well, here's the thing. I found the Riddler to be extremely interesting, but the thing is that Batman was the main character, and he's never the main character. It's always his rogues gallery. That's always been it. And you can't blame it because Batman, I think we've said this before, John, that Batman has by far, I would say, the deepest rogues gallery out of any superhero out there. Like,
yeah.
Most people know who the Joker is. I'd say name a Superman villain other than Lex Luthor and Brainiac. Could you do it?
I don't think most people could name
Most
Brainiac.
people could.
They probably maybe say Doomsday because that
Maybe
was such
Doomsday.
a thing in the 90s,
But I can name off the top of my head Poison Ivy, Catwoman, Riddler, Clayface, Two-Face. I mean, there's so many that people know about and that have been fleshed out over the course of, Jesus, I don't know how many years. But it's one of those things that, we know a lot about the backstory of Two-Face. We know a lot about the backstory of even people like Clayface, who were introduced kind of towards the animated series. Like, we know about these people, and so when they're in a live-action film, they end up taking over the film. Like, Batman Returns was not really about Batman. That was about the Penguin.
No, it's funny.
Catwoman.
Yeah, that was a huge complaint from a lot of people that, the critics are like, look, I don't care about it being like dark or gross or anything like that. What I do have a problem with is that Batman isn't in it. And I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with that. I bet if you took a stopwatch to things, I think it's pretty evenly paced. But I guess people that want Batman all the time, then yeah, maybe Batman isn't in Batman.
I don't even think it's a
Returns
problem wanting him all the time, John. I think it's called everything should be through the eyes of the main character. And if you watch any movie that isn't a superhero film, we clearly can identify who those main characters are. And they definitely get, the types of attention that any other film would. But Batman and any superhero films, for the most part, honestly never get that kind of treatment, They tend to just give all the treatment to the villains, and then we never really get any on the main character being Batman. So that's kind of what I mean.
Well, I mean, there is something to be said about protagonist and antagonist, and everybody thinks that the protagonist has to be the good guy. That's not what that means. The protagonist is the person that usually the story's around, but it's also somebody who has a goal, and the antagonist is the person to get in the way of that. Batman is always the antagonist in these stories, and because the protagonist wants to do something, albeit awful, but Batman just stands in the way. So it's hard to make a movie about Batman when all he's doing is standing in the way of someone else's accomplishment, no matter how awful those are in the first place.
I get that. Corey Fry, who's listening, says Poison Ivy was the worst live action version ever. I would agree.
Poison Ivy.
Yeah, that one was really bad. It was really
Curses. Curses.
As I told Lady Freeze when I pulled her hug, this is a one-woman show.
I want to have sex with his ice cubes.
Cough for me, Freezy.
Horrible. You know what the sad thing is that people will still think of that over even like Kill Bill with Uma Thurman. Like, some people will go there. I don't know. I see her and I just immediately go, how much money did they give you to be Poison Ivy?
I mean, a lot of actors love going over the top. She probably read the script and like, oh my God, I can just have so much fun and freedom with this thing. She probably just, fuck it.
Yes, well, I think her agent was probably just like, listen, it's a Batman movie. The last one was, it was okay. Made a lot of money. I mean, actually, Forever did make a lot of crap ton of money. So yeah, they were probably like, yeah, it came off the heels of that. Same crew's back. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the biggest star at the time. I mean, it probably sounded like a good idea, but you would think you'd read the script,
Well, they're probably like, Uma, they're going to pay you $900,000. She's like, wow, what are they going to pay Arnold? It's like $12 million. Don't worry about it.
12
Even
million.
Alfred's getting like 1.5 million, but you're a woman in 97.
Oh yeah, it was not good times. Still isn't.
But yeah, this DCEU is just it's a fucking mess, and I love that we have two separate Batman universes now. Like Joker, it's its own universe. The Batman, it's its own universe, and then we have the Batfleck universe is the main universe. Like I can't. So conceivably, could they just make another Batman movie that isn't part of any of these universes, and it would be called like the Batman,
the Batman,
and it's like I don't know, Matt Damon plays, but I don't know. It's just how many branches of multiverses can you get here?
I think they have to quit while they're ahead and just stop. I mean, I think what they're doing with the Flash is ultimately capping off that whole DCEU thing.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a hard reset.
No, I mean that's. If you look at kind of what they're planning for Flashpoint, which if you're not familiar, if you're not a nerd like me and John are, Flashpoint pretty much resets a lot of things in DC Comics. Like that storyline resets it. And I think that's kind of the idea behind this, is that this is kind of the send-off for those films. Because they've said they're not really anticipating going back in and doing anything with them. But I mean, I just think they have to focus on what works, and what seems to work are these solo movies that aren't connected. I think Marvel gets away with it because they've done the time to really craft a universe from the ground up. You could say that, well, they didn't introduce Avengers until later, but yeah, they did so at Iron Man. They had Nick Fury show up. That was the first time they really brought in someone else from that universe and then built upon it with the next one. Are there stumbling blocks there? Yes, of course. Iron Man 2 probably being one.
The whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel. I mean,
Eternals.
Eternals. I just included Spider-Man in my like top 15 movies of the year, so I'm a complete hypocrite. But
yeah, you kind of are. Are.
I just love Spider-Man so much. But yeah, but Brian, let me ask you kind of a deep philosophical question here about this movie. This and The Dark Knight, I think, are the only two movies that I can think of or remember that Batman didn't actually need to be there. Things would have resolved themselves without him. And considering that you could make the argument that Batman is a fascistic psychopath who actually could do more with his money and Wayne Enterprises than he ever does just beating up people who are at, the end of the rope and poor and desperate with his fists,
I knew you were going to go down that path. I knew it.
Well, and you need to make a movie that explains why Batman has to be there. The Marvel kind of world, makes sense. Like, okay, Spider-Man, X-Men, Captain America, they all have powers that like only they can solve the problem.
Right.
But it is a problem when something could be resolved without Batman being there. And I feel that arguably the two best movies about Batman, The Dark Knight and this one, that would have been resolved without Batman.
You think so? You really think so?
I mean, like, look, we're not in spoilers yet, so I'm just going to say the climax of this movie was going to happen whether Batman was there or not.
Well, that's always been a thing that has come up when it comes to Batman is, does Batman's existence actually enhance the problems within Gotham City? Mm-hmm. That has always been kind of a thing. It's always been a back and forth of, is Batman helping or hurting? And this movie, I can tell you, that does go in and tries to answer that question, which is ballsy for a movie that's got a lot of new stuff in it. But you're right. I mean, that's something to say about that. That's why I think there's a turn in the film. Because again, we haven't gone to spoilers yet. That tries to kind of answer that question.
Well, and I will say this to kind of build off of that. We got woke Batman here, and I'm surprised that like the Republican, what do they call those guys that are all pissed off because no ladies will fuck them? What's the name of those guys? Incel. Yeah, pissed off Republican incels are actually surprisingly quiet online of being like, this movie talks about white privilege and and
I'm looking at our analytics. I'm looking at our analytics on YouTube just to see it go. Pew! Like I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, but this movie brings up, like, I mean, the woman running for is it mayor in the movie?
Yeah.
She's mayor. Yeah, she like brings up like, hey, Bruce Wayne, you know how you don't do shit to help, and like the whole city is a fucking toilet, and you could help make that better. And he's probably thinking in his mind, I do make it better. I beat up drug addicts in an alleyway, and like, no, that's not really helping. And the movie talks about that kind of stuff. And the whole fact that like Catwoman talking to Batman doesn't know that he's Bruce Wayne. It's like, yeah, good. They're coming after assholes like Bruce Wayne, these white, privileged, rich dickheads that aren't doing anything except hurting everything. It's like, well, this movie is hitting on a lot of talking about, and it's not as in your face as The Dark Knight Rises was. Even in the trailer, like the time is coming for you, rich people, Mr. Wayne. It's past 2008, with the economy crash. So I'm Christopher Nolan, the most subtle man alive, So, but yeah, this movie is about questioning the whole idea of Batman, and good for it, I think.
Yeah. But I think these things, I think everything we're talking about here just takes a movie that could have very much been a normal popcorn weekend watch and elevates it to something other than just that. It elevates it to a serious drama that you really don't see a whole lot of superhero films do. Logan being one, Joker being another. It's something that, it definitely does. It's a risk, it's 100% a risk. And they could have gone safe. They could have absolutely done safe with this, but they chose not to.
But I think in their attempts to be as gritty and realistic and as grounded as possible, they created a scenario with nothing fantastical enough that only Batman could save the day. And I go back to The Dark Knight and Morgan Freeman, you created sonar so you can, spy on everyone in Gotham. And Batman didn't really need to do that. He did that just to find out what building the Joker was in. And the Joker wanted him to show up. Joker would have probably sent out some kind of I don't know.
Joker balloon? Maybe?
Yeah, Joker balloon that says, I'm in this building. Come and fight me. So at the end of the day, Joker would have been caught, and I know the whole idea of him taking the fall for Harvey Dent saves the city and blah, blah, but the city would have been fine, if it isn't a movie. So Batman wasn't really needed. In fact, Joker killed a lot of people because of Batman existing. Every time he doesn't take off his mask, someone will die. So in both of these movies, it's like, would it have even mattered if Batman wasn't there? I mean, yeah, maybe he saved a couple of people if you go certain plot points by plot points, but Joker still would have been arrested. The Riddler still would have done what he did.
Riddler.
Well, no, Joker in Dark Knight, and Riddler still would have done what he did in this one. I look at Dark Knight or Batman Begins and Dark Knight Rises, only Batman could have solved those problems in those movies. And
to be fair, I think that kind of analysis, it's warranted. I think that's the suspension of disbelief that you kind of have to do with these movies, because in reality, some crazy person writing riddles, they would eventually get caught,
unless there's Zodiac.
unless there's Zodiac. Yeah. But the point is that's reality. Obviously, these movies aren't that. These movies are amplifications of reality. So yes, we do need someone like a Batman to solve it. But I think the fact that this movie does ask the question, is Batman helping or hurting Gotham, is an important thing to talk about. With that said, I do want to move into some spoilers. So if you haven't watched the Batman, we're going to get into some spoiler territory. John, what was your favorite fucking scene in this movie?
And I hate to say this because I hate to sound like a basic bitch because it was so obviously like the shot because it was used in the trailers. I think every trailer, the scene where Penguin's car flips upside down and Batman's walking like in slow-mo with all the rain and he's upside down and Penguin's shitting his ass. You know, he's so scared. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, Batman.
That whole sequence. One, I love the fact that despite the fact that Batman is, you know, he's got this souped up muscle car as the Batmobile, which, you know, the one thing this movie does do a lot of is really build upon what the Nolan verse did with making Batman grounded. So like, even though he's got shit tons of money, his tech is still for the most part attainable, you know?
Yeah, that, and I'm sorry to interrupt just real quick, like that always drove me insane about Christopher Nolan's universe. Like Batman 89 is so farcical and so out there, like you just go along for the ride. But Nolan was so obsessed with like grounding everything in reality. Batman even like making his own batarangs like in the Batcave and stuff. The fucking like tank that he has, that is a part of Wayne Enterprises. Lucius Fox is not the only person that knows of the fucking tanks there. There's hundreds of people that know about them. And wouldn't somebody go, hey, I know that black car on TV. That's from the place I work, Wayne Enterprises. Yeah. You know, I bet it's Batman. Bruce Wayne. Because he's driving around in one of our top secret tanks.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah.
But my point is that clearly Batman built his own car and did it in secret, which makes sense. But yes, that sequence for me at least was awesome because Batman has to deal with all the traffic and all the shit just flying at him, and Penguin's kind of, you know, is running away, and yeah, he busts right through it, and you get that walk. And the best thing about this movie is the attitude that Pattinson brings to Batman as more in line, and I've seen this in other reviews too, more in line with the type of feeling we get from someone like Michael Myers, like a stalking monster, rather than a Batman who just kind of comes out from the shadows and is just there, which has always kind of been the thing you go with, right? He just shows up. But this Batman, no, he takes his time. He walks over, and he doesn't run. He just walks up, and it's terrifying. And I was in theater going like, holy shit, like this is the Batman that we've all been waiting for. And that's kind of why I said like this is the best interpretation of it. Because
now, do you like really spry Batman? Sorry, do you like really spry Batman, or do you like more like brooding, like slow? Because this one reminded me more of like, I guess for lack of a better, like Michael Keaton in a sense.
He had a Keaton.
He walks out of the shadows and that like basically threatens or tells the guy like, go ahead and try to hit me without saying it, you know. And I hate to give Zack Snyder credit for anything, but that one scene in Batman v Superman when Batman crashes in that room and it's like something right out of a comic book or video game of him like doing all these cool Batman gadgets and moves and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty neat, you know, and it reminds me of like the Arkham games, actually, which I know. Oh, what a Zack Snyder movie, like a video game? Can't imagine. But did you like this whole idea of him just kind of like slowly walking around like he's Clint Eastwood, and like apparently his armor is impervious. He gets shot with a shotgun at one point, and he turns the guy like, "Hey, fuck you."
Yeah,
don't shoot me with that.
I gotta say, like, man, like I was all for it. I was all for a Batman that actually embodied the character, and the character has always been about using fear against the enemy, and that's kind of what this Batman does. So yeah, I love that scene. I also love the fact that and I know that they've gotten flack for this. I love the fact that this Bruce Wayne is not a playboy. There are scenes in this where he's literally just like, he's all consumed by Batman. He's all consumed by that. And that's, you know, it's always been said that, you know, he in essence, when he's Batman, that's actually really Bruce Wayne. And that the mask he puts on is him not being in the costume, going out.
Yeah.
And what I love about this film is that you still get that he's learning how to do both. He's learning how to put on that mask when he is out in the public. That's why when he goes to the funeral and he's around everyone, he's just like really uncomfortable. And you could tell that anyone looking at him would just go like, that guy acts a lot like Batman, you know?
Yeah, like Christian Bale.
But yeah, like he has that mask on, and then it's only when he really is in the costume that it actually is him.
And I think that that's actually like a super great way to do it. And I mean, the problem is that with movies as compared to like streaming things or animated things, what have you, where you can go long form, is that you only have people for so many movies. So I think, like, you know, you look at Batman Begins, and I think Christopher Nolan, by the end of that one, he's like, okay, he has to be Batman by the end of that movie, because I'll probably only make like 2 or 3, maybe 4 of these things, you know, and it ended up being a trilogy. And I was sad because I wanted to see more Christopher, even after The Dark Knight Rises, I still wanted to see more Christopher Nolan Batman movies. But, you know, they're going so slow and methodical here that I think it's going to end up possibly biting them in the ass, because
You think so?
well, this seems like a season of a TV series or a long form graphic novel, because we really do get Batman in his second year, i.e., and once again, people, spoilers, Batman doesn't save the day at the end of this movie.
No,
Everything is completely fucked. You know, I mean, his car isn't the Batmobile yet. His costume looks like he's basically kind of sewn some things together. He's not the hidden playboy, you know, and that isn't all resolved by the end of this 9-hour movie. And, you know, like the way, say, Batman Begins is that they're going so slow that unless this entire run of Robert Pattinson movies is only like the first handful of years of Batman, then like, you know, how do you jump to, say, Batman year 5 or year 10? Are they just going to jump ahead in time?
I think they're just going to jump forward. Because, I mean, really, the one thing that this movie does, and again, spoilers, is that this movie does give Batman an arc. He starts off in this very, very angry. He literally doesn't even refer to himself as the Batman. He refers to himself as Vengeance. Which,
drinking game for
I love that. Because he is just pure and utter rage at this point. And really,
he's dangerous.
He's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
He's everything that, you know, the cops hate about him. He's everything that the criminals don't even take him seriously. But towards the end, his arc is completed in that he realizes that to actually help Gotham, he has to be something more. He has to no longer just be vengeance, but be hope, which is a new thing for Batman. We really don't assign the verb hope, or the adjective hope, excuse me. Yeah. English teachers who are watching this are going to be like, fuck it, that guy. You know, we don't really assign that to Batman. That's not really something we assign to him. But at the end of this movie, he's gone through that transition as a character, so that he does start to embody that. He's no longer just vengeance out to get you. He's saving people. He's helping people. So that is where I think you start to get the Batman that we know. At least Batman in the comics, is that he is not just vengeance. He is something much more than that. So it'll be interesting to see how that new persona gets tested when the Joker shows up.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that in a second.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, and I did appreciate that about the movie, because like one of the problems that I have with Batman is that, like, when he came out in, you know, I should say, again in the 80s, like, you know, his rebirth, it's the whole idea of Batman just beating up like low level criminals and you know, drug addicts and people that rob people, like people who basically society has wronged, have forgotten, and they are desperate and they will do whatever they have to survive. And it reminds me of the whole Death Wish or Dirty Harry kind of mentality of, yeah, I want to watch usually people of color, you know, but just people, you know, who are downtrodden get the living piss and shit kicked out of them. It's like, instead of addressing what the systemic problem is in the first place, which is much bigger than just watching a drug addict get his face beat in. And the idea that this Batman goes from that guy who just stalking the streets waiting for a gang initiation of beat this guy up and you can join our gang, and then beating the utter living piss out of them. Like, that doesn't really solve anything.
Right.
They're not going to stop being criminals just because Batman beat the tits out of them. So it just it kind of allows them to realize, okay, being the Batman is going to be more than just stalking the streets at night waiting to beat the shit out of people because my parents were murdered.
And that's what I'm saying, is that this movie gives that character arc for the Batman. And that's again why this movie, I think, does so well, and why people have really resonated with it, is that one, it makes Batman the main character in his own movie, and it gives him a real arc. And that also, the thing too, is that his arc isn't just, oh, he's in love with Rachel, or he's in, I mean, yeah, you do have a little bit of that with Selena Kyle in this, but it's not always just like Batman's trying to stop being Batman, because I've seen that played out so many times that it always ends with disappointment. Batman Forever was all about Batman doesn't want to be Batman anymore because of Nicole Kidman, which, okay.
I've never been in love before, Alfred. Like, take that, Vicky Vale and
yeah. What about Selena Kyle and Vicky Vale and
yeah,
I don't know, any of the other women?
Yeah,
I've never been in love before. Okay, but my point is like that's always kind of been the arc for Batman. It's always been about the Nolan films were always like Batman doesn't want to do this anymore. He wants to be with Rachel, but this isn't just about that. This isn't about Batman needing to be with Selena Kyle. It's about Batman realizing that the Gotham project, as he calls it, isn't just about beating up criminals, as you said. It's about doing something more. And that's where I think with the next film that you get, it's going to be a realization of that. I think that's where you will start to see maybe the Bruce Wayne not be a brooding, goth kid in his mansion, which I got to say, the mansion in this, the Bruce Wayne Manor, holy shit. They really went all out on that one.
It's not it's not Wayne Manor, it's the penthouse.
Oh, it's penthouse tower. Yeah.
Yeah, because they gave it up to the orphans and stuff, and now
Yeah.
Riddler's all pissed off. He's like, yeah, I live in your house, dickhead, and you never came around, prick. And then you were orphaned, and people were like, "Ugh, that's why I write you puzzles."
That's why I write you puzzles. So speaking of the Riddler, how did you feel that Paul Dano did as the Riddler?
I liked it in the sense of, look, I think that whenever you make an adaptation of something to a different medium, you're allotted a lot of freedoms. And it seems that people only really have a problem when you adapt someone's character quite a bit when the movie isn't that good to them.
Okay.
And I hear nobody really complaining about this version of the Riddler because this movie is, for all extents and purposes, pretty good. Is it the Riddler that we know? Not really. But as I said, I like the idea of creating a new version of a character. So I had no problem with this not being typical, and I can actually do air quotes because we're actually live, but if you're listening to this after the fact, I'm doing air quotes. Not your typical Riddler. I mean, he still is. He's still a narcissistic, guy sending puzzles out. But yeah, I like the variation on it. I like that they took chances with that kind of stuff in this movie.
I for me, the biggest thing was they tied the personalities of the Riddler and Batman together. In a way that I didn't think it could do. I didn't think that was something impossible. I mean, one, I'm not as adept with the knowledge of the Riddler because he's always been kind of like a C villain, I always felt the Riddler was a C villain. Yeah.
I feel that it probably does go Joker, Penguin, and Catwoman is such a gray area on villain.
I'd say anti-hero at that point.
Anti-hero, yeah.
Anti-hero, yeah. But the Riddler kind of was like, what's his? He's a gimmick character,
Mm-hmm.
He's got a gimmick. Yeah. His gimmick is everything is puzzles. And honestly, Two-Face up until about I'd say since Long Halloween had always just been kind of the flipping of the coin shit.
Well, hot take on Two-Face. He's a one-trick pony. Once you get past Harvey Dent transforming into Two-Face, Two-Face is useless.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I still like
that's my take on him.
Yeah. But my point is like I like that they merged in elements from real serial killers like the Zodiac and applied it to a fictional character like the Riddler, because it seems to make sense. And then they tied his backstory in with it, with him being kind of in the shadow of Bruce Wayne, the most famous orphan in Gotham, and kind of being butthurt about that for years, and using that as kind of the fuel, and him actually being inspired by the violence that Batman inflicts. Again, asking the question, is Batman hurting Gotham or is he helping it? And that's kind of the turning point. There's a scene, it's a fantastic scene, where we actually get Paul Dano talking, because he doesn't talk through most of this movie without wearing his mask. And he's having this back and forth with Batman. And he basically says, like, I was inspired by what you were doing, and that's why I did what I did. He viewed the criminals not just being the criminals that Batman was beating up, but the corrupt influence that had corrupted his life, that had corrupted Gotham. And he was, in essence, doing what Batman was doing, being vengeance against the corrupt, and he's doing it in the only way that he knows how to, using his mind and using violence. So it's interesting how the Riddler and Batman are parallels in this film.
And I will say this, like, and I would never say this in reality, but in a fictional sense, was Riddler for the most part really that wrong? Because every politician that he uncovered was human scum. And I'm not saying murder is ever justified, but it's like, wow, am I supposed to hate Riddler? Because he almost has a point here.
He almost has a point, aside from the fact that he's like killing other people too.
Yeah.
Like at the end, which again, spoilers, when he floods all of Gotham, that's not just affecting, say, one or two bad people that are corrupt. That's affecting the entire city and killing senseless people who did nothing wrong other than just they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's that. And honestly, I felt that scene needed to be there so that we didn't have that conversation of saying, was the Riddler really that bad?
I kind of got parallels to, it's going to sound weird, but I will explain. I kind of got parallels to Trump with the Riddler in one sense. Like, all of the inflammatory dog whistling that Donald Trump does, is he ever going to actually go out and do something with his own hands? No, he's a fat, old, elderly, stupid person who's never
stats. They're just gonna
who's never done a thing with his own hands in his life. But what he can do is, with all of his offensive, racist, dog whistling, whatever ist here, he's going to encourage these psychopaths that follow his every word to go out and commit violence in his name. And that's kind of what I think this movie suggests, is like all these Riddler clones in this movie that want to assassinate the mayor and do all this stuff because, like, they want to be just like their hero, the guy who spouts, we have to, I'm the only one that can fix everything. And, this is the only way it has to be. And if you ever want your country back, you have to do. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? I
mean, there's no way. And I mean, Matt Reeves isn't going to say that, hey, this is pulled from here, but there is no way in hell that you can tell me that the events of the Trump administration and all that goes with it, and just the history we've had with this stuff hadn't infected the script writing. There's no way you can tell me that you didn't get flashes of January 6th in this, because it is. And that's the thing too, is like my brother and I was driving back from watching this, and he remarked, he's like, this movie's really good, and part of it is because a lot of what is in this feels real.
Yeah.
A lot of what's in this feels real. Using social media for terroristic ends. I mean, all of that stuff is real. That happens every day. We saw the consequence of it. So the fact that a fictional film uses that, I think it only enhances. And it's sad to use realistic, real tragedies and real horror, but those sorts of things, when used properly, amplify the fictional elements within a film.
So yeah, I could see how some people could say that maybe this movie is too bleak and too gritty and too dark. Because, like I said, yeah, it makes the Dark Knight. It doesn't make the Dark Knight look like Batman, the 1960 show, but maybe it makes the Dark Knight look like Batman Forever, as you mentioned earlier. In comparison, like it seems like, oh, how quaint the Dark Knight is now. And I remember all of us thinking like, oh man, this is such a dark, realistic, like haunting portrayal of Batman. And then we get this movie where it's like 7 plus and Brad Pitt is wearing bat ears,
Yeah.
So
Now, were there any things in this film that you didn't like? Because we talked a lot of this review, as you no doubt can guess, is that there were things that we love about Batman. But what were things in this film that you did not like, John?
I've kind of I kind of hit on quite a few of them. And the thing is, people are like, didn't you like the film? I love the film, but that doesn't mean any film is flawless and there's not criticism to be had. I brought up already too much Batman, that it's maybe too bleak. But there are some laughably silly things in this movie of Batman just being able to survive anything that happens to him. And like, I kind of let this shit fly in Marvel movies.
I know which one you're talking about too.
The collar bomb?
Oh, not that. I wasn't going to talk about that. I was going to. Oh, okay. You go ahead.
Yeah, a giant fucking explosion goes off 2 inches from his face. And the thing is, he takes his cowl off in this movie, and it's like rubbery. It's not armored, and his mouth is exposed, and so are his eyes. And he gets this huge explosion in his face, and he's just kind of like, sleepy for an hour. And then like wakes up and is immediately ready to kick every police officer's ass in the room. So first off, I'm like, okay, he's dead. He just died, but he's fine. He doesn't even have any like burn marks around his mouth or nothing. And then,
well, John, this is PG-13. We couldn't show blood.
And then the cops have clearly had him at like headquarters for maybe an hour, 2 hours, and none of them have taken off his mask. Not a single. This is a vigilante criminal, and no one took his mask off.
That scene, I was also just like, no one's gonna fucking take his mask off. Like, he's unconscious. You could do it right now.
What was the scene you were talking about?
Okay, so the scene I was talking about, I hate this scene in this film. Not for the reasons that most people hate it, but the scene where he escapes from the cops and he jumps off the building and glides for the first time in his wingsuit.
Squirrel suit. That's a real thing.
I know it's a real thing, but I hate it. It's something that I really don't like. Now, I know that people are going to be like, well, it's realistic, and I get that. And yes, I get it. It's his second year. That's the only thing he's got. But I'm just thinking, like, Batman needs to, like, glide and then quickly get into action again, and he can't really do that if he's got to, like, inflate his wingsuit and then reinflate it, and then, you know what I mean? Like, it just looks silly and stupid. Plus the fact that he then crashes into a bridge?
Yeah, he now has a shattered rib cage and internal bleeding.
Yeah.
He needs immediate medical attention, but instead he gets up and goes, oh, fuck, and goes home to Alfred.
Yeah.
He's like, I need some tea and a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
He's fine.
He's fine. He's cool. But yeah, I did not like that part. I thought that was kind of silly. But at the same time, like, as I said, I could go back and say, well, it's his second year. By hopefully year 3, he's figured that one out. But yeah, I felt that part was silly and just not really Batman. But yeah, that part I had an issue with. I didn't have so much of an issue with the collar bomb, just because of the fact that that's part of suspension of disbelief. I wasn't going like, oh God, he should have been dead, because he's fucking Batman. He's not gonna be killed because of a collar bomb.
Hey, Brian Wells happened in my neck of the woods, sir. I did a documentary on it. In fact, I've stood exactly where he blew up.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I forget about that. But my point is that, I like the fact that this Batman fails often. Because any normal person would be like, okay, this guy's got a collar bomb around his neck. I probably shouldn't mess with this. But Batman, being so new still at being Batman, feels he can take it. And of course, the guy blows up. So yeah, I like the fact that this Batman fails consistently and learns from it.
Yeah, because he screws up a lot, which is kind of refreshing. Because as we mentioned at the top of this thing, that Batman is kind of a Mary Sue and like never does anything wrong, and so it's nice to kind of see him fall a little bit.
Yeah.
But one of the issues that I had with this movie is that like none of the other characters in a movie that is a shade under 3 hours.
Yeah.
None of the other characters seem to have really any time to develop at all. And I love, and of course I can't think of his name right now, but the actor that played Gordon. By the way,
yeah.
And although I do think Twitter freaked out, Gordon ain't black, but fuck you people.
Grow up.
Grow up. But yeah, the actor that played Gordon, he's been in so much stuff. He's fantastic as Gordon. Andy Serkis was great as Alfred. And I mean, and I know the movie wasn't about Penguin, and I know that we're getting a Penguin TV show on HBO Max. Not TV show, streaming product, whatever you call it. And you'll get more of it there. But goddamn, Colin Farrell blew me away as Penguin.
Colin Farrell should get an Oscar just for the fucking Penguin.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
the
none
fact
of them
you had
got
to act
any
under
time.
all that shit, like you had to act under all of that stuff,
Yeah.
and he pulled it off. He pulled off the perfect Penguin.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love Danny DeVito as the Penguin, but that is a very different Penguin from what we actually get. With this. But
none of them get any time. I feel like the only person that gets any time at all is Batman. And, I'm going to compare it because they're all Batman movies. I think of The Dark Knight. I think of how much time Harvey Dent got, how much time Gordon got, how much Alfred got attention. Rachel Dawes got attention, and there was a nice balance of like feeling all these characters where I feel that we just never left Batman's side.
That's the problem, John, is that The Dark Knight gives all of those characters time, but doesn't give Batman any. So he doesn't get any. Yeah. He doesn't get it. What is his big thing? Is that, I'm in love with Rachel and I want to stop being Batman because Harvey Dent's gonna take up the mantle. That's nothing. Nothing. That's crumbs. I personally, I like the fact that this movie was focused squarely on Batman, in that we were viewing this movie through Batman's eyes, which we really have not had. We really haven't. Even the Keaton films. Joker steals a show in that movie too. Or Penguin or Catwoman. It's never been the audience looking through what is happening with Batman's Rogues Gallery through Batman's eyes. And that's what this movie does really well. I think Selena Kyle gets a lot of screen time in this. And it's interesting to see that relationship, that back and forth between Batman and Catwoman in this, that feels natural and doesn't feel forced. Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman is by far one of my favorites. But I liked what Zoe Kravitz brought to this. It was more complex. It was not just, I'm working here because I'm working here. It's, no, I'm, my father's Carmine Falcone, and there's a history there. So they do give time. It's just, it might not be as much as we're used to from us watching other Batman films. You know what I mean?
And the thing is, we do get narration, I think, at the beginning and the end from Batman. And I think I maybe would have had an easier time if it was more noir-y, like Batman narrating everything. And that way we don't get like a scene where, Alfred is like cooking breakfast and, by himself and being like, I don't know about this Bruce Wayne of mine, because like obviously Batman can't be there to narrate that, but but we don't get that, and it just feels like everybody doesn't have really that much time to develop. Because I don't know, I would compare it to Batman Begins. Like, I did feel that I got to really know who Jim Gordon was in Batman Begins, and Batman Begins has a lot of problems for as much as I like it, but I felt that I got to know who he was. I didn't really. The only reason I knew who Jim Gordon was in this, as good of a performance as that actor gave, is that because I knew who Jim Gordon already was going into this movie.
Right.
He's like the one, uncorruptible cop, and, questioning whether he's doing the right thing by, working with this vigilante, like, married to his job and affects his relationship with his wife and kids. Like, I know who Jim Gordon is, but this movie didn't tell me. If I had somehow never heard of Batman in my life, if I saw this, I would I don't really know who Jim Gordon is. I knew that because I knew going into it who that character was.
Jeffrey Wright is the actor, by the way.
Jeffrey Wright, thank you. Yeah.
Jeffrey Wright's the actor. Just because I don't want someone to be like, you don't even know the name of the actor. But no, I think for me, it was refreshing to actually see Batman be the main focus, and that we, the audience, are getting that interaction through him. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this movie progresses, because we've seen a lot of movies where they hit it out of the ballpark on the first one, and then we get to the sequels, and it does, shitsville.
Well, I think the nice thing is that now this is a blessing and a curse. It's an assembly line where they're not going to allow anything to happen. Like, you look at Superman 2 and they're like, Richard Donner, you're taking too much time. We're going to bring in this idiot and make it a cartoon and sell cigarettes, and then Batman Returns to like, hey, Tim Burton, you did really good. Make us another one. He's like, well, I want to do whatever the hell I want. And they're like, well, okay. They won't allow that to happen, anymore. Yeah. So I don't think it'll completely shit the bed. Well, will it hold up? The next one, I do have confidence in this director. I think it'll be like the Bad to Thriller. Thriller, will anything really match Thriller? No, but I mean, Bad is still great if you're a Michael Jackson fan, before you found out that he rapes kids, allegedly. He's dead.
I love how you threw that in there. I love it.
But yeah, Brian, one thing I wanted to bring up to you here is as we're slightly wrapping things up. Yeah. I read a review of this film that says, this might be the most gritty and grounded Batman or superhero movie yet, and that's a good thing. And my question is it? I mean, what is the next Batman movie going to be? Where is he just going to be in like a black sweatpants and a black like hoodie and like, I'm Batman, and just like as grounded as you could possibly be and as dark and moody as you possibly could be? And I'm not saying I want Joel Schumacher, but where is anything remotely fantastical? Where do you go for that anymore?
I mean, for me, it all comes down to the mythos. Okay. It all comes down to the mythos. It all comes down to what kind of ties into the character. And for me, I'm okay with Batman being gritty and being grounded in reality, mainly because of the fact that it fits within the character. Batman does not have superpowers. He doesn't. Okay. And honestly, I think that's why when they tried to inject a lot of the grittiness into Superman with Man of Steel, that didn't work. Like, I remember, John, we were in college, I think Man of Steel had just come out. We were in grad school, and Man of Steel had just come out. And I remember that we were talking about it in class. We were saying, like, this doesn't fit. Like, why are they making it gritty? Like, it doesn't fit within the mythos of the character. So I think as long as it stays within that, with keeping with the mythos of the character, then that's fine. I think for me, you have to start off with Batman, Gotham City, all being characters in their own right. And this movie starts you off there. So it's really just a matter of, by the second one, do we finally get a Batman that matches what we've seen in the graphic novels? And I think for me, I think we're going to get that. I don't think it's going to, I think it's going to add in those fantastical elements because it has to, because where do you go from there?
Well, I think a movie like this, though, can only exist in a world where you ignore all other DC properties. And I've actually always kind of liked that about Batman movies, and why, I mean, before I knew that they were just going to be garbage anyways, but I didn't like the whole Zack Snyder world, because if Batman is so grounded and so realistic, then but he lives in a universe where Superman and Wonder Woman exists, the Flash exists. There's a guy who lives under the sea, but not SpongeBob SquarePants, and there's a cyborg man, and there's a Green Lantern from another galaxy and stuff. Like, where does Batman, like, it's what's so nice about Batman is that he lives kind of in his own universe in that sense. Yeah. But yeah, as soon as you incorporate those characters, like the whole dark, gritty, realistic world of Batman kind of goes out the window. But I also think that, like, in this movie, you can't have Robin, you can't have Mr. Freeze, you can't have Clayface, and you can't have Killer Croc. And as much as I do love those characters, I like my Batman as grounded as you can be, and all those are kind of fantastical or silly kind of characters. But you kind of limit yourself in that sense of ever bringing that in if everything is so, grounded and everything. But
true. But I think though this movie sets up a Gotham City and a character that can grow from there. So I mean, who's to say that in the sequel to this we don't get a fantastical element added to it? Who's to say we can't? Because we've already kind of set a ground plan. It's almost like, have you seen the series Pennyworth at all?
No.
Okay, it's really good. But Pennyworth does a good job. The first couple episodes are very much grounded in, and Pennyworth, for those of you who haven't watched it, it's on HBO Max. It's actually really good. It tells the story of Alfred back in like the late 50s, early 60s when he's in London as a SAS officer. So it's all like his adventures through that. And you would think like, oh, that's not going to be interesting. No, it is. And part of that is because of the fact that it starts off being grounded in reality, and then as the series progresses, it starts to move into fantastical elements. So that by the time you get to, say, the end of season 2, you have characters that were like, well, there's no way that character would exist in reality. So it's a progression. So that's why I think that by starting off grounded, you always can move up into adding those fantastical elements. So, I mean, I expect that there will find some way of adding in, say, I'd love to see a Clayface personally. Just because that character, at least mapped out from the animated series, is such a tragic character that I would love to see that character brought in. But I think you can add in things like a Mr. Freeze or even, a Joker or something like that. Well, speaking of Joker, your face right now. It's great that we're doing this thing where I can see you, so I can actually see your face. But what did you feel about the cameo at the end of this movie?
Well, I didn't care for it. I thought you don't have to force feed Joker into everything. It reminds me of Batman Begins, like, take this guy, for example, and they hands him the card and it's the Joker. Oh, look into it. Like, oh, we're going to get the Joker in the next movie. Like, it actually would have been interesting if maybe they made a series of Batman movies without the Joker. I'm not saying never bring him in, but like maybe 2 or God forbid 3 movies that don't have the fucking Joker in them.
Yeah.
I mean, Mask of the Phantasm. The producer of that movie said, well, we need to throw the Joker in because nobody knows Phantasm and people aren't going to come to the theater unless Joker's in it. So he just shoehorned into that one too. Yeah, I didn't like it. I thought it was cheap.
I didn't hate it. Okay. I didn't hate it. And I watched an interview Matt Reeves did after that because he revealed, he's like, yeah, it's a Joker. But what I liked about it was that it was obscured, and what Matt Reeves basically said in his interview was like, yeah, I'm introducing that the Joker exists in this universe, but that doesn't mean that he's going to show up in the next movie. So, yeah. There you go. And
he's like Thanos.
Well, I mean, kind of, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, we're introducing that this Batman has now moved on to his classic rogues gallery. And that's what I think is nice about this particular film is, and it's something that we've seen in, say, the Long Halloween movies and the graphic novel, is that is really set up to be a transition from dealing with gangsters, which Carmine Falcone and Sal Maroni are, to dealing with these super villains, or his classic rogues gallery. So I think that's kind of why they put the Joker in there. I mean, I hope that the second one they actually take another crack at Mr. Freeze personally, because the animated series did a hell of a job with it, and they've never really tried with that character since then.
You know, as much as this show Gotham was kind of a piece of crap, they actually did a fairly good rendition of Mr. Freeze. So
Which one was? Yeah, they did do that one. Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it would be nice to see a live action cinematic version that mimics what you see with the animated series Mr. Freeze.
that doesn't kick some ice.
Yeah, no puns allowed. And I'm not saying that we need to have, like, you know, Egghead or anything like that in there, but, you know, I'm just
King
saying
Tut.
King Tut. Oh God, is that the Fantastica elements that you really want, John?
No. But I also think that, like, there is less forgiveness when you try to ground everything and make it realistic. Like Batman 89, by comparison to anything that came out before that, was grounded.
Yeah.
But it was also so goofy, and you knew you were watching a comic book movie, that when Batman showed up in the Batwing, you didn't question it because you knew that's the tone of the movie you're watching. You're not, where did he get that? You know, because it's Batman 89. Where now it's like anything Batman has or can do or does, like, I'm like, where did he, you know, get that? Because they want to make everything so grounded and so
I think that's
realistic.
also our kind of cynical nature now with these movies. You can also, even if you wanted to, you could blame the internet and say, well, the internet kind of makes us do this, you know, that we kind of, you know, go over and over it again, every single detail about a trailer, and kind of hyper analyze it, rather than just sit back and enjoy the fucking movie. But I mean, for me, I don't go into too much about that. I think there's enough fantastical in this movie to get it, you know. I'm not going to sit there and go like, well, how did Batman get a jet engine to put in his goddamn car? I don't care. Like, it looks cool, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of where I'm at on that. Well,
right.
That's a lot of Batman. And we didn't even talk about, like, you know, the whole, like, stuff with Thomas Wayne and the Arkham stuff, which is crazy.
Brian, we probably could have gone 6 hours. We could have Ken Burns this shit if we really wanted.
But I don't want to do that to our, what are we on now? 2 listeners currently. Thanks to our 2 listeners who are currently watching.
Yeah.
But yeah, to wrap it up here, John, do you think that this is the right step forward for DC?
Yeah, because they can get away with it. I didn't think that they could try to create their own cinematic universe and be like, just kidding, here's some movies about the same characters, but they're not these characters. And I thought, like, that sounds like a hot mess, and this whole thing's going to implode on itself, but it's actually the best things that they've done. So I will stand corrected and be like, yeah, I think this is the best thing that they could do. So, you know, who knows? Maybe we'll get like a Wonder Woman movie that's not Gal Gadot or something. I don't know, you know, but yeah, good for them for, you know, just going outside of their failures and actually succeeding. They rolled the dice and they got 7. So good on them.
Good. Yeah, I also feel that they need to do more of this. They need to really keep them separate. I don't think the DCEU model works. I think really just kind of do these solo, very personal films rather than the big, gigantic blockbuster size, Marvel size movies. I don't think that works for them. I don't think that model works. And keeping it true to the mythos of those characters. So, awesome. Well, we talked Batman to death. And done it on camera. So, John, where can they find you at on the internets?
You can find me at Vengeance.
Vengeance.
By the way, good for Robert Pattinson for not doing this whole time. You can find me on Twitter, Unreal J Wolves, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff, just under my name and everything. And please go to my YouTube channel, JDubs Video Nasties. I forgot my own channel for a second. God help me. And I'm gonna have an interview with Adrienne Barbeau from The Fog, Escape from New York mod coming up very soon. She was super cool and super open about a lot of things. So yeah, hopefully you'll be able to check that out soon and enjoy that. I hope so.
Awesome. You can find me at Brian Connington. I also run the Psycho Show page. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Psycho Show. You can also find us on the Epicast Network at epicastnetwork.com. If you have a favorite movie or quest you want to throw away, or if you're either a Trump supporter who hated our rip on him, or you hated the Batman and you want to tell us, you can contact us.
Make Batman great again.
Yeah, you can contact us at cinemapsychoshow.com. And be sure to follow us and subscribe to us wherever you listen to audio, especially if you are liking this YouTube thing. You can follow us there for our visual audience. And we will see you next Bat Time.
On this same Bat channel. But look, the Harlem Globetrotters and Scooby-Doo are technically part of the Batman universe. Matt Reeves, I want to see them in the next movie, Dark and Gritty Scooby. Make it happen.
Goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Ryan, John, and Elaine.